Okay.
Either after.
Do me a favor. If you'll shoot me days next week at around 9 that you suggested, that would work.
Okay.
Alan right here.
Yes. Yeah.
I think y'all look great.
Eric, you've changed a little bit.
Welcome to join us at the table if you have no fears. Thank you for all coming. Before I turn it over to Mr. Williams, I thought what I would do is go through the agenda items and let you all kind of look at it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Marita Hawkins, who's going to talk about Mercer, and then Marianne Hamlet, who's going to talk about stipends. If you turn to your...
Go ahead.
Okay. If you turn to page 1 of the page 3 of the agenda, this really should read as proposed district goals. Still's got to go before the board and for their review. On page 4, there were, I believe, there were 9 questions that were proposed to the department. The commission had questions about. The first question had to do with energy and whether or not we could do an energy audit, and that really is going to be part of the RFP that is currently under construction. There is an energy report.
You guys are on the wrong side of the table.
Thanks.
What additional facilities and square footage will be added next year. We have listed the new schools, the square footage, the number of classrooms. Beginning.
So how should we think about this in terms of, obviously this capacity is obviously it's coming in different pockets in the city. So do we get in that second in terms of where this capacity is leaving overcapacity and where it's not?
And also, isn't at least one of these a replacement?
Yeah, if you go to the next pages, beginning page 7, 8, 9,
Okay.
10, 11, you will see the high schools. And let's, on page 7, let's pick Wilmer Hutchins High School. The E represents the enrollment. So you have an enrollment of 794. And the C represents the capacity of 800, and that's permanent capacity. So Wilmer Hutchinson High School is at 99% efficiency, utilization.
So permanent means excluding portables, right?
Right. And so page 7 is a high school. Page 8 are the middle schools, and you can see the areas where you're below utilization, low utilization to the higher utilization. Page 9, in the next 3 pages, you will see the elementaries. The district was broken up into 3 elementary sections. Elementaries north, and page 10 then is the elementary southwest central, and the final page 11, is the rest of the elementaries in the southeast.
Maybe to follow up on Todd's question, but just to put the 1,122,000 square feet in context here, how many, just in classrooms or campuses, how many square feet do we have aside from this?
There was a report, I think, last time, and I believe it was about 25 million, I believe.
25 million.
I think this is about a 5% increase. A little less.
Yeah.
And how does that compare with the portable capacity we have?
Well, you will see further down here, one of the questions was portables, and
Right.
I have listed the question that had to do on page
23.
23 lists the permanent school building cost analysis with the portable school building cost analysis, utility, custodial care, and maintenance costs. And then on the following page, page 24, you can see there are, on the far left hand, there's 1,543 single one-room buildings at 768 square foot. So I didn't do the extension, so.
On
looks
page
like-
23 at the bottom, it says we've got 1,000,005,
Yeah, there you go.
right, portable square feet. So this is approximately a little less than that. But
I guess, here's what I was thinking, and tell me if I'm missing something. What I was thinking is that you had, let's just say you had a page for the high schools, a page for the middle schools, and a page for the elementary schools. And you basically had the schools listed down the left, and you basically had their capacity, utilization. You know, they're either 75% or they're at 92% or they're at 133%. And then you basically had, and that's pre-portables, right? And then you basically include the portables, and then therefore you got to a capacity utilization when you include the temporary space. And then you basically add in the square footage that's being constructed for the bond program, which obviously decreases the amount, would obviously impact. So you have like an adjusted capacity. And then the question is, how many of the portables do we get to replace as a result of adding on this new space? And where do we still have meaningful either overcapacity or undercapacity once we've done this inventory and process? So it's just trying to show myself or the committee or the taxpayer where we're going as a district based on the construction that we've started, or that, I'm trying to remember, Steve, is there another phase beyond 2012?
Yes.
We've raised
one-
money for.
Phase 3, which is going out for bid. They started the bid packages. It'll be bid in the first part of next year.
And I know that we've got the demographic factor, but before the demographic factor kicks in terms of where we think neighborhoods are moving, or before we change attendance boundaries, just trying to understand, just from a sheer macro standpoint, where are we today? What does 2012 alleviate? What does Phase 3 alleviate? And where do we end up once we've finished Phase 2 and Phase 3 from a capacity standpoint? And then you can look at where do you still have some meaningful problems, either under capacity or overcapacity, that you still have to figure out, i.e. Joe May Elementary potentially, in Northwest Dallas, where I know that's been held up by the city, et cetera. So how hard is that to do?
Well, I think the department right now is looking at that, and they're looking at the capacity in terms of how it is that we're going to go and forecast the enrollment at each one of the campuses. Now, it's my understanding that the portables, because of the cost of tearing down the portables, won't be torn down. But the way that all of the campuses are funded, there's a basic allocation to all those campuses, and it's based on their enrollment. You will see in part of this document, we're also looking at some of the very small schools, about 200 to 300, and looking about closing and saving money through closing, the possibility of closing some of those schools. So it all kind of works together, and the department under Charles Friday is working on that.
The information you're talking about is available. We just have to put it together in that format.
There's another format which tells the same
I
story.
know that your format's very logical, so that's what we should use to communicate with people. And I think we probably have, in the terms of the Bond Advisory Committee, we've addressed that and put that information out. We just need to get it up to date. I mean, as Jim said, we're looking at 7 elementary schools to be closed for this same school year, and then one middle school combination in the following year. Has it been identified today?
Red lights are back on. Are they supposed to be?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
So clearly this has some public relations potential, upside or downside, as the trustees in the district will have to go back to the taxpayers for another bond election sooner rather than later. And in the 2008 bond election, it was heavily advertised that we would get rid of these 2,000 portables as part of that bond election. And when we look and see that only 111 have been mothballed, for lack of a better word, since 2008, the public has a much keener memory, especially with the help of the Dallas Morning News, than we would probably like to admit.
Michael,
So-
let us put that together and see how big the problem is. I mean, I do know we've got some issues. I mean, we opened the Wilmer Hutchins Elementary School, and immediately, we were 250 kids over capacity, just like that. So we're putting the
Showed up and
portables
using
out
the
there.
space, yeah.
So, I mean, new schools attract, and then there's, the George Bush relieved Anne Frank, and so we can, presumably mothball some portables there. But, I mean, we've also got a major issue over at Truett that we're not addressing with this bond program because it has developed since the commitments were made. So we've still got a lot. I mean, that thing's bursting at the seams.
Bond fund to tear down, remove portables? I got the sense from his comment that we weren't removing portables because there's a cost to it that would have to run through the operating budget. Is that a comment? Is that?
Well, yes, yes, that's correct. We cannot. I mean, what we are doing is sealing them up so that they cannot be used. And that at least takes the maintenance and the and utilities cost out of it, so that, because if you leave the things open, I promise you they will get
Someone will use
used.
them. Right. I agree.
Oh, yeah, they'll get used. But back to, I don't believe, I went and spoke to a couple of groups about the last bond, and I don't remember promising that 100% of the portables were going to go away. What I remember was presenting to people that we were asking for half of our need and that we keep, we're continually trying to dig ourselves out of a hole from not having a bond for 10 years. But then the other thing, I didn't know that about Wilmer Hutchins, but we can point to examples all over town. I mean, where we told the people in my neighborhood that we were going to, support the bond, we're going to build 15 classrooms and lose portables. Our enrollment's the highest it's ever been.
Can we build the classrooms?
We built the classrooms, we still have the portables, and we're the highest enrollment in my memory. And we've sent 3 elementary schools to other high schools.
We've had a history over the years of opening schools that are not near large enough. I know when I was in the classroom, 3 elementary schools were built to relieve my school, and each one of them had to open with portables. So there's always been a history of short-sightedness when it comes to really projecting.
But then you look at something like Conrad, and they built it, and it's only, half.
But it was we desperately needed Conrad.
No, I'm not saying, but it's.
But we didn't know they were going to then tear down.
It's difficult.
Oh, I know.
also tore down approximately 8,000
Yeah.
Right, no,
Right.
I'm not faulting the plan, it's just so difficult.
I mean, it's not an exact science, and we've had some serious shifting of population.
But people gravitate to the new buildings, because I remember in our area, we were frustrated that the associate superintendent at the time did not want to put too many kids at Medrano, because he believed that he wanted to allocate fewer kids than capacity, because he believed that additional kids would show up, and they did.
And I mean, they all came from Cary mostly, because Cary I think we ended up with, in leveling that year, reducing teachers by 25 or something, which is a lot for a leveling.
Someone who is not as familiar, can you give me a sense for when you guys redraw? You've set on attendance zones. When does that process happen?
They're redrawn every year. We would make a proposal. They're generally in the January timeframe. They're approved. Our goal is to get something to the board in December,
Okay.
to try to brief it in December, and then to finalize it and finalize the briefing in January to do that. And then we're dealing with issues of attendance zone issues to reshuffle the Wilmer Hutchins issue to nearby schools. And then we have the proposal on the table to of identified 7 that we would like to close.
One other point, just
Recommend that.
from a historical standpoint, when we moved 6th grade to middle school, that was such a big change that Moses made a promise that, or put forth that, and we won't touch boundaries for 5 years. Well, we had to break that promise within like 18 months. So that's how hard it is.
There is, you can see two middle schools coming on in 2012. I mean, they're in areas that they're desperately needed in terms of capacity. And
Are there any schools that are coming on that you
I don't think we've identified any in that case. I mean, most of the campuses that we have identified are in the South Dallas and in the core of Dallas on Ross. You know, how many campuses we have on Ross Avenue.
So realistically, how, in the format that we discussed, do you think that could be sent out in the next 2 weeks?
I don't know. I have to look and see how it stands. I mean, Jim and I can sit down and look at it tomorrow and figure it out. But so, I mean, essentially, we're talking about square footage, enrollment, so that we have the permanent capacity, then the portables on top of that, minus what we're projecting. The question really is can we get past that and project what changes are going to be made in attendance zones and in school closures this year, if any.
That's the next step, but I think at a minimum, just trying to understand that, across the entire district, before portables, we are X% occupied, and now when we build this new addition, we are Y% occupied, but as a result, therefore, we will be able to move out of and close, shutter X% portables across the district and remove the operating expense associated with those. It's really just about a plan, pathway to stabilization.
And I'm quite sure we have that. We just have not put it together in that fashion.
Most of those numbers were provided last in the presentation.
And we're missing these, which is why we wanted to have them
Okay,
added. Yeah.
so I'll add it in there, so it shouldn't take what you.
But I mean, we're going to open 2012 campuses, and then we got 2013 campuses of both additions and new campuses that'll be open for that are also part of this.
Wouldn't it also be, on page 12 and 13, I was hoping we were going to see that by campus. We've got 20% of our population that's not in its home school. And it'd be interesting to see which schools are losing versus gaining.
Well, actually, on 12, it's 30,000 that are, in private schools or in charter schools. And then the other 30,000, we're trying to put kind of a raw table there together of where the students are. You can see, if you go to the far left column, you can see under A is administrative transfers and then magnet transfers, so they transferred within. And some of these others, I'm still trying to get to define. So of the 158,000 students that go to our schools, 30,000 of them are probably going to other campuses other than their home. But there's another 30,000 that are not going to our schools that are within the attendance zones.
Right. Well, and I think, to follow up on Louisa's point, that's what we were trying to get to, is so that when we look at some, like the Roosevelt, just pick an example, feeder pattern, is, when you see 52% capacity, is that a result of simply a population decline in the feeder pattern, or is it people opting to leave the feeder pattern, whether it's in the magnet schools? And I think that's what we are interested in getting a handle on, because, if that's a significant factor, the district's planning by allowing people, more mobility for AYP and otherwise, whether it's required by law or just because we're allowing it, complicates the planning picture even more. You have people just, but I don't know to
Yeah, I
what
think-
extent that's going on. It'd be nice to get a handle on that.
Well, you can see on page 12, the magnet transfer of 10,000 students by Harvard was percentage, and so they're moving from their feeder pattern all over the district into those magnet programs. And that's probably somewhere around 7.5%.
We can work to get that by home campus.
Well, I don't want to put you through the work if people don't think it's meaningful, but
So,
I've seen it before.
See.
Which code in here is what's a hardship transfer? That has to do with where their parents work potentially, or?
Could be any number of things. We'll try to get you better definitions.
Okay.
I have mixed feelings on this because I have sympathy for people who make, changes for different reasons. But I think what you put forth is meaningful. Is of those that are under capacity, would they be closer to capacity if kids weren't transferring out?
But you can kind of look at that whole area, Roosevelt, Madison, Lincoln. You can see we're under capacity at all those high schools. And it really creates a problem for us because those kids, we can't offer the same programs at those schools that we can at the bigger schools. So those three schools concern us a lot. Roosevelt, Madison, Lincoln.
It's huge.
And I think I brought it up in that when we talked about it in Dallas Achieves about opening up career pathways, they mentioned that there would be in the choice process, if you didn't get your first choice, you'd get your second choice, but that's because we would have capacity at schools, and I don't have the sense that we, in our traditional schools, that we have a capacity where we turn anyone away. And it's complicated.
I actually was surprised when the number, as best I could tell, the number that was the number of students who were leaving their campus because they had the right to do so due to NCLB was only 878.
Right.
I was fearful it was a much bigger number, which obviously has a transportation cost associated
And there's a whole lot of supposition out there where people say, well, we've got this, that, and because I've done student directories, there's a lot of myth in what people say, and then the other myth is that
in terms of where they live. You mean?
no, well, that's true.
That's true.
There's definitely, we have a lot of people who use a relative's address to get to the school where they want to be.
Yeah.
But where there are transfers, there will be a lot of conversation in the community that says, well, we've just got, we've got so many transfers, and I've done this student directory, and I'm like, no, we don't. So there's a lot of myth, but then there is the side that kids move. They can live with three different relatives in the same school year.
So we are, we've had 157,600 kids plus or minus the last 6 years running. We've got 2.5% increased capacity coming on board here pretty rapidly. We've got some underutilized schools. Is this a theoretical build it and they will come? We're going to gain some student enrollment on some of these new schools?
There's no projections for increased student enrollment.
So the Wilmer Hutchins phenomenon was just people were attracted to a new school and then used by whatever means necessary to figure out a way how to get there.
Well, a lot had moved out of the community too, hadn't they?
Well,
When the school
it
closed?
was. I think it was fairly difficult because when that school district was absorbed on June 1, 2006, and so what happened was that we had to move. We moved all those kids out up north into basically into both the Carter and South Oak Cliff feeder patterns, and some all the way up to Roosevelt. And so then now when we open those campuses back up, then you have people that were living in there that went someplace else. We don't even know. It came out of, I guess, the proverbial woodwork to enroll. Because, we were we're not expecting that. But there is nothing theoretical about, we're not building in hopes that people will come. What we're trying to deal with is a shifting population of the same number of students. And obviously that model does not work if you don't shut down buildings.
And reducing the age of the buildings.
true. And to eliminate portables. I mean, all of those things are.
I don't know if you're allowing outside comment, but there's
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to know how many students in Wilmer Hutchins are there on affidavit? Because having worked in, I know the affidavits are supposed to be based on homelessness, so you get into a lot of sticky areas when you ask people. But basically, all they have to do is say, I live at this address, I sign it, he signs it, you take it anywhere and get it notarized, and you walk in and enroll your child in the school. So,
that's other than a utility bill?
it's all you gotta do. And so, well, I'm saying that's where it came about. That's, if you look in policy, it goes.
Sure. It was meant to be a temporary substitution for homelessness and may,
Exactly.
your question is it getting abused?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's my comment.
Just out of curiosity, you're a parent, a teacher, what's your capacity?
I'm an employee,
Okay.
but I've worked in a school where I believe that was a serious problem.
Okay, good to know. We're just kind of figure out the context. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
And I would be willing to bet money that that's what's going on at Wilmer Hutchins, because in my case, the school I work in was a brand new school also. And people assume brand new is better.
Assume we could find that out.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes a difference or if there's even anything that can be done about it, but if you're opening a brand new school and it's automatically, you know,
Right. Right.
is that something that can be, is something to look at?
All right, thank you.
2,500 in NA, that's a large number to be NA.
Yeah, we're researching.
Do we have a sense, maybe, or we just, never mind, I'll move on. Okay. All right. Any other questions? You want to go on number 5, I guess?
Question 5 was asking about utilization, and the previous map showed the utilization currently. I understand what you wanted. I just wanted to show, if you look on page 15, kind of a concept of teacher utilization. And the way that this works is that if you have one teacher, a teacher can teach 22 students, and that's 100% utilized unless you do this ratio. But once you get to 23rd students, now the teacher is only teaching 11 and a half, and so you get this curve called an efficiency curve. And so if you look at the x-axis, you can see the most efficient kind of portion of this curve happens around 260, 280 students within a class level. You get your most efficient. So when you have small schools and you divide that small school up into 6 classes, it tends to get less efficient with your teacher. Whereas if you had more at a class level, then you would get better utilization of teachers. So as an example, in a large elementary school of 1,000 kids, you could have approximately 250, 300 kids per class level, whereas when you've got a school that will only fit 250 and divide that by 5, you get very small. And so because of the way that the numbers work, that you won't get a very efficient use of your teachers. And to show this, if you go to the next page, you'll see where we clustered up the schools. They're kind of like T-graphs here on the top of the two schools that we cluster at the bottom. Then when we put it together and we divide the school, one school doing K through 2nd and the other school doing 3 through 5th, you pick up usually about 2 teachers in the 2 less teachers you need. So of the 26 teachers we did utilizing this theoretical pairing of schools, we saved about $3 million.
But these weren't actually recommended consolidations. These just said if we had done these 2.
Right.
Because one of the issues would be your transportation model might change. Now, if these are all in a neighborhood where kids walk, it's not an issue, or if they're
Or alternatively, those 3 teaching positions, instead of being eliminated, could be used to be a counselor position, an arts teacher, some other thing that had to get eliminated because you had inefficient schools.
Right.
Because I got that strong sense when we did that tour of Madison, which was because of the whole Title I requirements and not being able to be more than 10% above any or below anybody other school. It really constrained these inefficient schools. And from reading the newspapers, I'm not sure that message is getting out to the community in the most compelling way.
No, it's not.
You know, the smaller campuses are a major problem, and we've got 2, both Ron Hell and Obama, that'll start to show up next year as those have to come in under comparability. Obama in particular, is the ability to staff those and to provide the breadth of curriculum that you're providing at the larger high schools. You just can't do it.
So this seems to me to be, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, this seems to be a pretty broad brush here in terms of teacher utilization. I mean, surely a math teacher will have an easier go at grading 250 tests than an English teacher would have in grading 250 term papers. And then that break down this, I mean...
These are really elementary, K through 4, where it's required is what we've done. And what we did is it's in here as an example of how the model works. We're not recommending that. In fact, we think right now that the most efficient way to do it is to close entire campuses and to consolidate and to leave the model that was designed by the board and that the district has been working on is to move K through 5 in all elementary schools be K through 5 and that all middle schools be 6 through 8. And have been in the process over time, and the 2008 bond program was designed to do that. And some of the closures that we're recommending are designed to finish that process.
You'll see under the closure that, some of the school sizes are like 250 kids, so 300 for the whole school, so for 5 grades.
But we're still following the K-22. Well, the state of Texas is still saying that K through 4 should be 22-1, and some districts have asked for waivers. And the concern was that if we could give relief, by adding 1 or 2 children and getting waivers, then we're giving relief to secondary.
So that question's answered in question 6.
To be consistent, that second bullet should be 18 million. If we were to raise it from 22 to 1 ratio, 24 to 1 ratio, we'd save approximately $18 million if we had teachers. I believe Mr. Corby had come back from TSA, Texas School Alliance, saying that they understood that the 24 to 1 waivers had been passed, had been.
Some districts took advantage of that this year and asked for a large number of waivers. We did not. We only asked for 56 classrooms, which is down really from what or right about what we've been asking for the last couple of years. The belief is that at 22 to 1, our average class size is slightly under 19. And at 24 to 1, it would be probably not much more than 20. Now, but it would probably increase the number of waivers that we would have to ask for. It would greatly increase the efficiency of the staffing in most places, but it would increase the number of waivers. And it's hard to predict that, but it wouldn't be 56. It'd be closer to 200 probably.
56 waivers were all approved this year?
All waivers were approved, and the only waivers that did not get approved this year were in AU schools. We didn't ask for any, but statewide everything got approved.
Except
for AU schools.
But everything got parked for quite a while.
Yeah, it got hung up in the politics for a while. It was a presidential election.
So can you give us an idea where these waivers are being applied? What schools?
Yeah, we know exactly. There's a board doc. It's being voted on this month, actually. It's got all of that in there. We can furnish that.
Somebody tell me what the optimal student-teacher ratio is for maximizing student achievement.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
I think there's a little bit of literature that says if there's, and some of you teachers probably know this better than I, that if you've got classes less than 15, it tends to make a difference, but once you go over 15, that's my understanding.
Can you point me to
I'll look for it.
Well, I think we,
It's not just class size, it's a three-legged stool. It's class size, teacher certification, and ongoing education. It's not just class size. And I heard it was under 12 in the research that had been given. So, see, I did quite a bit of research last year, and I'll try to get that over to you, too.
But prior to two bond programs ago, I mean, if we wanted to, I don't know if it'd be meaningful, but we used to have a huge number of waivers because we had no choice. There were so many schools that were like Wilmer Hutchins are today, where more kids showed up and we had to wait for portables and.
Well, but there was no bond program from 1992 to 2002, and so there was a huge backlog of all the population shifts. Again, there was I mean, you guys have seen the enrollment, and again, it peaked around the Katrina time at 164,000, and then is settled back down to 157,000, and been that way for the last 2 or 3 years. But with the backlog that was generated because of the lack of a bond program, that's exactly what happened.
So remind me, at K through 4, we're at 22 to 1, and we asked for relatively few waivers.
That's correct.
And 6 through 8, we are at 24 or 25. And then 9 through 12.
6, isn't it? Or
I
27?
believe it is 26.
It's recommended, that's not what's actually happening in some places.
Right. So in some cases, it's much higher. In some cases, it's
36 and 38.
But again, it's a master scheduling issue.
That's how they're staffed. You know,
Yeah.
we get that, that's how they're staffed. That may not be how many are in the class, because what you and I ran into at Madison is, in order to offer electives, they end up with 30-something in the core. So, I mean, we staff them based on those ratios, and that's not recommended. That's how they're staffed. And then what happens is the principal takes it and schedules, and then depending on how many small classes they have, they load the other ends.
But I assume a primary driver of the 33 to 35 to 37 exceptions is really prevalent in the underoccupied schools because of the
Yes.
efficiency issues.
Because they don't have the flexibility when you're 500 kids to offer some of those electives and get any volume in those classes.
Yeah, in the waiver, we don't have to ask for waivers only K through 4, because there's no requirement otherwise.
State level at the other grades.
And most of those are, the smaller the campus is, the more difficult it is. And the closer the balance is between bilingual and regular general ed students also, because that creates that is an additional layer of difficulty in scheduling.
You said that Irma Rangel was due some additional FTEs because of Title I comparability next year? Is that what I heard?
I'm saying that we're having, all of the small campuses, we have difficulty staffing them so that they have a full breadth of curriculum, the smaller the campus. Madison is a major issue. Ron Hell was a major issue this year, and Obama will be next year as it's qualified. Now, we have a couple of other campuses that qualified for the TIPS grant, which they get about $1.6 million, which is Roosevelt, North Dallas, Samuel, and A. Maceo Smith. We get about $1.6 million a year over 3 years, and we would have big problems in those campuses, in a couple of those campuses, if we did not have that money. In particular, the Smith and Roosevelt.
So the issue right now is that Rangel and ultimately Obama get large enough that all of a sudden now they go into the 10% plus or
Mount
minus.
Hill's in there, yes, but Obama is not right
The
now.
only choice with that school is either figure out a way to grow it or to get a waiver, if you can get a waiver. Which
No, there's no waiver on that. You cannot get a waiver on
So
comparability.
we have to either, so what are the choices? We
Class
either-
size, we can fund it with federal funds through class size reduction, and that's how we picked up some for Rand Hill.
But it's still, I mean, we're still squeezing, I mean, you're really squeezing it. You're really having, I mean, the difference between there and a place like in a comprehensive, 2,200 kids in a comprehensive school like Sunset.
issue because of capacity? In other words,
No, it's
because
just-
they're not
Subscription.
retaining enough kids.
I mean, it's open. I think there's plenty of capacity, and we certainly have buildings where we could have, where if we had to move the facility, we could move it into more capacity. It's just not, that's the demand. The demand is settled out at about that number. I don't think we're turning any kids away on that.
900 is still the level that separates small schools from large schools in comparability? Is that our break?
We have some flexibility to move that, to optimize it, but yeah, something like that.
I guess we're going to have a conversation about comparability again later on in these sessions.
Yes, sir.
You have to continually run that model against whatever budgeting that we're doing.
Once something like Rangel gets involved, then all of a sudden it changes the dynamics for every other school within that category.
That's correct.
So there's no policy that the board has set that you know of that is causing this at Rangel or?
I mean, once you
or-
decide to have that campus, then, and the board decides to do that or approves it, and then it's just a question of enrollment.
And we haven't put a hard cap on enrollment based on,
No.
It
because
turns some away at Rand Hill, I don't know why.
I did have a parent reach out to me this week asking why no AP classes are being offered at that school. And
That's the problem.
if we could, we'd probably get more enrollment, I would think, but
JP classes at Rand Hill?
Staffing.
I mean, we had to use, we had to put, just to staff what they've staffed, we've had to go four positions out of Title II class size reduction, just to operate the schedule that they're operating.
They have 4 positions more than they should? Is that less?
We have 4 that we funded out of federal funds that didn't count toward comparability.
Okay.
In other words, I couldn't fund those 4 with the general fund and meet comparability, but I could do with Title II. Does that make sense?
But we're in a situation where you can't, I mean, there's not that's not unlimited. I mean, we can't go much farther than that, and so you start to run into big constraints there in those size campuses.
It's like it's got this two-edged sword where you're offering this program to engage kids, but then because of Title I, you can't offer all the things that would keep kids engaged like AP.
Now, the other thing that can be done there is that you could, to the extent that you could get community support for direct donations to both Obama and Ron Hill to operate that,
Obviously, you know,
that does not count for comparability.
as you know, Rangel has a foundation supporting it. Couldn't do that.
But you could have direct donations for teacher salaries. That's what I was told last year.
He's saying you can, and it doesn't count toward comparability.
Well, you can't do it because it's not something that you can guarantee year to year.
I mean, that is a problem, is, you know, that to the extent that you can't, that the funding,
One's a sustainability issue versus a legal issue.
and the sustainability issue is a real problem, but you could do that. And it would not count, I mean, it would take probably some board action. The board has to accept the funds and has to agree to, but if somebody wanted to come in and endow Obama and Ron Hill, they could do that.
sell the naming rights to Bank of America's school of Barack Obama. I don't know.
Thank you for that. That's
I don't-
good news now.
I don't want to put too much of this on Title I. I think there's been a strong sense of the board that they would like to see spending per student fairly similar as well in each campus. Basically, sort of the backpack theory. A kid carries around X thousand dollars in the backpack wherever they want to go. So, yes, there's a Title I constraint, but I think there's also just a general budgetary constraint. It's not legal, but it's
Well, certainly in a tough budget environment from an equity standpoint. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, do you have a sense for where you guys are headed or thinking about on number 6 in terms of whether or not you want to go and ask waivers next year?
Number 6 right now, that's what we feel like we're going to have to do.
Yeah, we believe we would staff at that level and ask for waivers when however they fell out.
Okay.
Concern I have is, TEA, the commissioner has to approve it, and he's trying to make it a little more difficult for us to get approval for those waivers. And they'll look at things like fund balance, possible pay raises, and what's the other one?
Those are the two main ones.
I.e., if you have a large rainy day fund and you gave raises, why did you ask for waivers?
Right.
Got it. Okay. Kenneth?
On number 6, the last bullet point, I'm not following the last statement related savings. Can someone expand
Currently,
on
we
that?
use 22-to-1. Teachers assume that's to staffing level for kindergarten through 4th grade, and then 5th grade we use 26, and as Mr. King said, on high school we use 26-to-1. A number of districts, let's see, in practice this becomes a ratio of 19-to-1 because you can't get exactly 22 because of the attendance zones. You can't get exactly 22 teachers into a classroom because there may be 4 or 5 second grade, and so you staff at 22-to-1, but then the actual numbers. So when you look at the numbers, you really end up right now at 19-to-1, which is a utilization of 84%, due to how the students are spread across the district by school, by class, number of classes within the school. If we were to use a ratio of 24-to-1, the utilization would stay at 80. Actually, a little bit more than 84%, and we would end up with an approximate ratio of 20-to-1. So we would get a better utilization of those teachers with 22-to-1 if we raised it to 24, because it would allow us to put more students with the teacher. Does that help a little bit?
In this last part of the sentence, you say, which would allow us to save 300 teachers.
Right.
How do you save 300 teachers by increasing?
Well, it depends what you mean by save. They don't mean save the
We
jobs.
need 300 teachers less, or we could take a portion of those 300 teachers and frankly deploy them, well, other than subject to Title I, you could deploy them to other schools, right?
Wait a minute, you need 300 less teachers
Right.
because you've increased the student-teacher ratio.
Exactly.
That's correct.
In K through 4. In K through 4.
And the average teacher salary or cost of each of those teachers is $60,000.
Yes, roughly. Just under 60 with benefits.
So because you need 300 less teachers, you can cut the budget by $18 million.
Estimated.
If you choose not to allocate any of the 18 million somewhere else in the
We're
district.
we need
If
to.
you choose to eliminate the teachers.
Yes.
Okay.
What-
And this is all back toward how are we going to figure out a way to, where we're going to come up with 30 million as a budget, given the prospective cuts. And part of it may come from this, part of it may come from school consolidations, part of it sources you guys were.
Why do we use the terminology save rather than eliminate 300 teachers?
Well, this isn't really designed
This is not a
for
public
public
document.
consumption, so you're,
No, I'm saying for discussion purposes or for analytical purposes.
save should say eliminate. You're correct.
Okay.
I have a
I'm sorry,
quick
Lynn, go
question.
ahead.
Has the commissioner approved waivers like this for complete grade levels?
This year, he approved everything.
Okay. And there were waivers for the 22-to-1, which is state law, and he granted those, correct? Okay.
But also, there were districts outside of Dallas ISD that were more aggressive about seeking waivers than us. Is that correct?
Usually smaller districts, though, right? That was,
That's my home loss.
well,
No, I mean, Houston,
other than Houston.
Houston had, I think I heard a number, and again, it's an anecdote, I don't know, it's like 800 classrooms. So there were a number that the number of districts that staffed at 24-to-1 going into this year at the elementary school, and then just asked for waivers.
Of larger districts that staffed it at the 24-to-1 district-wide ratio, and then they requested a waiver and got it approved. Now,
We were at the very low end in terms of waivers per percentage of waivers this year.
Is there a way to go beyond an anecdote, Steve, potentially for purposes of the board wanting to know that if that's going to be part of this and try and help from a benchmark?
I think we can. I mean, obviously, it's public information because the commissioner had to approve them, and I don't know what form that takes. Our problem, and it was what Alan said, the concern is not what they did this year, it's what they're going to do next year, because it is the commissioner's discretion. And right now, there is the financial hardship was added to that as a reason to grant a waiver, but it's still defined by the commissioner.
Is it fair to say or not fair to say that the TA will be able to point out where those, will they be able to track, or will they take the effort to track where those waivers were granted and see what impact it had on standardized testing?
I doubt if they'll do that. It's generally, I mean, they lack accountability in other folks.
Okay. Kevin?
What's the effect on student achievement of going from a 22-to-1 ratio to 24-to-1?
I'm not sure anybody knows.
Nobody knows.
I mean, it's not, it's not knowable right now. I mean, I think you can look at it with hindsight. There are so many factors. It's not like you're doubling class sizes. We're on average adding probably one kid per class, on average. Now, but what happens is that again, where you have bilingual, where you have a bilingual general ed mix, things become complicated, and that's where most of the issues are. Now, I mean, there are two issues. The smaller campuses make it much more difficult, and then when you overlay the bilingual general ed requirements on top of that, it becomes more difficult.
Does anybody attempt to know?
There have been a lot of studies done. The results vary a lot. Some will say the class size, within a broad range doesn't seem to matter, right? Others say it matters a lot. I would say that when I look at what the board decided last spring in introducing, say, full-day pre-K, they saw that this would cost $20 million. $30 million. Yeah. That had a direct impact on the student-teacher ratios at middle and high schools, not elementary because of the constraint for the most part. But there was a conscious decision made that we were going to try and get kids into the system earlier, that would be more beneficial. The benefit would outweigh whatever costs there might be.
Said differently, we could close the achievement gap using the same dollars by trying to close it earlier than having one less child in 11th grade per teacher and trying to close it that way. That'd be another way.
Todd, your commit group is going to focus carefully on that early childhood development, correct?
Yes, we will focus on that. The 0 to 5 we will.
So,
Dr.
but
Bill?
I think it was
Yes.
informed by quite a bit of research that's out there that said that class size actually doesn't matter that much. Again, I'm sure Rena could roll out 100 that say the other, but it's very controversial, and there's research out there. It's been studied a lot, and there's research out there that comes to different conclusions.
There's so many factors. It's kind of hard outside of it to do something. I mean, obviously, a really good teacher trumps class size, probably.
Then you have to look at the mix.
Let's play that out. If it doesn't matter at all, why don't we have a class size of 1,000 to 1?
I don't think anyone's saying it doesn't matter. I think the
There's
question
just
is...
a lot of variables. You could have 10 kids in a class with a poor teacher, and it doesn't, how do you weigh that with a really great teacher that has 35 kids?
I mean, we can all, those of us that are parents, we can all speak to scenarios where this mandate takes flexibility away from a campus principal, where the law says you've got to add another teacher, and you've got parents saying, don't take my kid out of this class. I don't care if there's 28 in here.
I want that teacher.
I want that teacher. And I've lived it. And then I've seen a situation where the principal had the flexibility to say, Mrs. Kruger, will you take 26 so Mrs. Strieber can have 18 and be more hands-on? Or this is in the younger ages where kids are learning at different paces, and both great teachers, but I want her to focus on these kids who are behind, and this one's, doing really well with 26.
I think you bring up a very good point, Kenneth, which is, I think, at the end of the day, this is all about trying to empower principals who are the closest to the decision, and if anybody could make that judgment, a good, strong principal, I'm not saying all of them are great, but a good, strong principal probably is the best judge of what to do versus a budget commission or a board.
And another example is a principal who said, because we have these other factors that say when you get to 500 or 600, you can now have an assistant principal. I've seen principals say, I don't want an assistant principal, I want another 5th grade teacher. So my answer is principal empowerment and strong teachers.
There again, it depends on the quality, because you do have the differences where you've got a good teacher that has to handle your LEP students, your inclusion students, your behavior problems, and those all tend to be stacked into that teacher because she can, quote, handle it. But then you have to look at what happens to the quality of what goes all of this, and teach and stay till 6 and 6:30 at night, be there at 7 in the morning, not have a planning period because the principal has mandated a meeting during that time. I mean, there are a myriad of things that go into that. A good principal would make sure those things didn't happen, but that's not always the case, like they've said. But more kids, depending on what that makeup is, can have a huge difference, even if it's one child. Because if it's a behavior problem and you've already got 3 or 4 in there, that's another one. There's nobody to come in and assist with that. There's nowhere to send them to get the assistance because they didn't qualify, or nobody will do the work because the paperwork takes almost a year to document a kid to even get testing done. And then the psychologists or the test diagnosticians are so backed up, they can't do it. So that kid sits in limbo or is sent to somebody else's room for 30 minutes or so and then sent back to redo what's done. So there are a myriad of things that go into that.
And we're probably running long here, but I would say if you just do a little math, right, and I think the number, if I'm not mistaken, at high school now is 27 to 1 is the formula.
26 to 1, Ms. King was right.
Okay, say 26 to 1. English teachers are now teaching 7 periods, an average of 26. It's probably an average a little higher in the core program, so they can offer these other electives, right? So, 26 times 7, you're at 180 students or more. You're going to assign, say, an essay for an AP English class. How do you grade and do justice to 180 essays? I mean, So those of us that have kids in high school, we're feeling it. We're wondering how, strong the education is, right?
But in your example, they're probably not. They probably don't have 180. One teacher doesn't have 180 AP students. That probably that's the regular teacher has that, and then the AP students is considerably less and then they balance out.
But even so, even if it wasn't AP, you're trying to teach them English and how that you got to write, you got to do it. Sorry, Todd.
That's okay. I just want to make sure everybody's made very valid points, and I'm glad that you guys did. So we're going to obviously keep this in mind when we come up with recommendations later. Well, why don't we keep going, trying to stay on schedule, because we got to wrap up at 7.
Well, why don't we flip to stop here and flip to the other 2 items on the agenda?
Come back if you've got time.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we want to do Mercer, or we want to
We'll do Mercer.
Sure.
Thomas.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody, members of the commission and members of the audience. My name is Luis Tamez, Executive Director of HR, and we're here today to present some information that was requested in regards to our Mercer contract. So we have about a 10-minute presentation. We can go through the presentation, or we can do Q&A while we're going through it, whatever your pleasure, however you want to do it.
Be careful what you offer this group. Okay.
10-minute presentation.
Okay. Our Director of Benefits is Marita Hawkins, and she'll move forward.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marita Hawkins. I'm the Benefits Director for Dallas ISD. And for you. We have a customer-focused service in the benefits department, so the main thing that we want to make sure is that we deliver that service to our employees so that they can focus on serving the needs of our students. So we offer competitive and innovative, easily accessible benefit programs to allow them to do that. We are currently, as of October 2011, serving approximately 21,200 total of employees, and 18,500 of those are eligible for health and welfare plans, which Mercer's contract serves at this point, and some of those are, we have retirement plans as well, which I'm not going to be talking about. This is the overview of the department as it currently exists. The first 2 items, the health and welfare and the leave of absence, are handled by the outsourcing program, which is through the HIC local agreements. So they offer the customer service center, online enrollment and administration, and the communication components. We do have an employee portal that's we call Dallas ISD Your Service website. They also handle the leave of absence management, and they do have a separate call center for that as well. They handle the processing and compliance. I do have retirement in my department as well, which handles the retirement counseling and TRS coordination. Voluntary retirement programs such as 403B and 407. We also have the mandatory FICA alternative plan and the STAR plan 401A. We also handle the Americans with Disabilities Act accommodation, compliance and training. We do accommodate employees with disabilities. We offer supervisors and managers as well, and also have the wellness, employee wellness as part of our department function. And this is the staff of my employees that are not on contract with Mercer. There's 5 of us that handles everything else other than what Mercer handles. We do have technical support for Mercer for vendor interfaces and with our MISM, as well as I have one person out of interfaces with vendors. So that's my team.
What's the departmental salary, please, yearly?
Excuse me.
Departmental salaries for this department for the year? Collectively? It was $480,000 is what was quoted in June, but I think that was 2 down from a couple months before.
Get that number for you?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that number.
Provided in last month's by org packet.
This is the structure of the interlocal agreement. Obviously, Dallas ISD has the contract with HISD, and HISD have contracted Mercer to provide the health and welfare administration, communication, absence management, and consulting. And within that contract, they also have what they call THCP LLC, which is the Health Partnership. They do have 4 staff that are on site with us. And the sponsoring district, as I mentioned, is Houston ISD. We do have Alden and Katy ISD within the. Just to give you an idea on the history of why we outsource and what the benefits administration looked like before we outsourced. We did have a high turnover in the benefits department, lack of personal skills in the benefits administration. When I came in, there were 16 full-time employees with 5 vacancies, and that was back in 2000. I was hired by Dallas ISD as the executive director in the benefits back in July 2000. At that time, we received the initial renewal of Dallas ISD medical insurance, which increased more than 40%, because they haven't had any increase 3 years prior, and so kind of make up the difference on the medical plan at that point. So we did renegotiate it and redesigned the plan benefits to reduce that increase, so we were able to manage to reduce it somewhat more palatable to the employees. We had quite a bit of protest and picketed by our employees. I don't know if some of you were here at that time, with the employees showing dissatisfaction with the current program and the service in general. We had a paper-intensive and ineffective administrative process at the time. We had buckets and buckets of enrollment up 20. We have more than 20,000 at the time that we have to address. So I remember coming in and, during annual enrollment during that period of time where we had literally buckets and buckets of manual enrollment forms. So the Dallas ISD benefit fiasco was headline news constantly, so I spent quite a bit of time dealing with the media when I first came in. We did not have an adequate system to administer the benefits. We got quite a bit of calls in the department because of a lot of employees are complaining. I could literally get 1,000 calls in a couple of days in my line. And we had a lot of lineup in the HR department complaining about errors and so forth. And when I came in, we were trying to finalize all the 1999 IRS audit that came through for the 403D plan at that time, so we had severe penalties. And ineffective leave of absence process was in place, and we really prone to non-compliance with FMLA, which is a big violation. And we had a questionable compliance with COBRA at that time, and we did fix that as we went along. A lot of our issues were the inaccurate eligibility and benefits off the plan when they're not supposed to, so we have quite a bit of that. And the decision to outsource was really, we continue to have the rising healthcare costs to be a big issue for the ISD at the time. And Houston ISD actually talked to Dr. Moses at the time and wanted to see if we could partner, they could partner with us and we could partner with them to make the benefits outsourcing arrangement. And in March 2001, the Board of Trustees approved the health and welfare benefits outsourcing. We implemented that in January 2002. At the time, it was an ADP web-based benefits administration, and we helped. Mercer provided the benefits consulting at the time, not necessarily the administration component. There were 3 partners, which is the THCP, the Mercer, and the ADP partners at that time. Based on the estimated calculation, we save about $10 million under a self-insured plan, and that includes about a $2 million implementation cost of the outsourcing. In January 2004, we did join the Dallas, the TRS Active Care Plan for the medical plan. So Dallas ISD still retains Mercer for consulting and ADP for the benefits administration, including the call center. In 2005, Mercer took over the benefits administration, so they pretty much took over everything at the time, and including the procurement and call center, on-site support, and then the communication. And we also at that time implemented the leave of absence and management, which was not part of the initial implementation.
Is that a cost decision or a service decision?
It was a service decision and also a cost decision at the time to where, because when we joined the TRS Active Care, Mercer's no longer doing the consulting part of the health care. So instead of reducing the cost, we implemented the leave of absence as a trade-off for the implementation of that, and among others.
The question is, why did we switch from ADP to Mercer?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. The switch from ADP to Mercer was really a Mercer and HISD decision, because there was, I would say, a divorce between Mercer and HISD, because Mercer contracted ADP initially to provide that. There was a relationship issue with that.
But Mercer subcontracted to ADP.
Correct. And then they took over that subcontract.
ISD and Mercer split ways.
That's correct. They had a divorce, basically.
They had a divorce. And ADP, I mean, Mercer took over the functions that they historically had been subcontracting to
Yes,
ADP.
sir. Yes, sir.
And we didn't have any choice over that, or?
We had a choice to try to renegotiate the contract and go to ADP, but at that time, based on the implementation time that we had on the timing of when they notified us that it's going to happen, we just didn't have time to do that, because we have to re-implement everything to where if we have to do a procurement. So we decided to just transition the administration part to Mercer. And they also at that time provided that they will increase the staffing within the benefits on-site staff.
Okay.
So,
Survey, or do we get feedback, or is it more anecdotal from our staff in terms of how they view Mercer, or the benefits by your area in terms of user friendliness, response time, etc.?
we get surveys that we generally do often quarterly and then annually during benefits enrollment, and they do have favorable satisfaction.
And we renewed the contract for 5 years, expires in 14.
Yes, sir.
And that contract is how much?
31. It's $4 million. It's going to come $4,784,000 per year.
400,000 a month.
4,000 months. And it's a non-cancelable contract, or it has a penalty, or how does it really work?
It is there is a termination clause in the contract, and there is a penalty to repay some of the implementation costs, which is almost down to nothing at this time because we've had the contract for quite some time.
Those costs have been amortized long?
Yes, sir. It's been amortized.
So in your view, is wanted to go rebid this, we probably could with relatively little penalty?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
There's time, it's a 60-day window prior to April 1st, which is the anniversary date, that we have to do that.
But from a timing perspective, if I may add, Mr. Corby, it's really more of our enemy to make sure that we do re-implement before we, they pull out from us. So it's really critical is the re-implementation of the program, whether you switch a vendor or you take it in-house.
If we had a new vendor today, we probably wouldn't be able to do it until the following year benefits period. We would have a very difficult time getting it done.
It took us 3 years to implement what we have with Mercer, because up to stage 4, basically. But that doesn't mean we have to implement everything at one time. So it's going to have to be put into a project plan.
Do you have a sense for the market, how it's changed or not changed? How do you feel about a $4.8 million contract today relative to what you hear in the market?
I think given the changes in our way of doing business, because we have the TRS care plan, it probably could do a lot better.
A lot better.
Yes.
In 2009, when the contract was renewed, was it part of a bid, or was it just?
Yes, sir. We did do a bid. We had three contenders: Mercer, Ceridian, and Hewitt. And the cost savings at the time was not sufficient to really re-implement the program. And there were some unknowns with the other vendors as well. And they weren't able to provide the full package at the time.
Betting person, do you think we're $500,000 over contract, $1 million over market?
I would how we entered in the bid. Depending on how much is within the package. We implemented quite a bit of stuff with Mercer and within this contract. I think some of the things we have to look at, what are the must-have and what are the things that are, are essential to be able to function so that we can reduce the cost.
You notice a couple pages over that. We were.
And I do have a page.
We're going to get an answer for that.
Yes. Some of the things that benefits of outsourcing would be to improve customer service delivery, and we did improve that, and it's proven year after year. The cost containment of healthcare expenses up to the point when we went to TRS Active Care. We do have the cost containment on the voluntary plans because continually each year we have reduced some of the costs for the employees. So that's a big benefit for our employees. And we improved negotiation because of cooperative procurement. We also have compliance with state and federal regulation. We improved the administration. It's like a night and day, basically. We improved employee communication, implemented a wage-based enrollment system, and there are other benefits that I can name. But
I think bottom line is that if education or competency and your employees are relatively satisfied with the services, outsourcing is the way to go. The question is, what's the right cost? So.
Absolutely. That's actually where it lies. How much does it cost to satisfy our employees?
So what are you guys recommending this? What are you guys going to be doing? What are the next steps you're taking with respect to this contract?
We are I'm going to address that if you don't mind waiting, sir.
Just skip over
that.
Okay.
Skip to that.
Okay. We have some other options within the. I have been looking at several options. Right now, I'm in the process of issuing an RFP, and our hope is that we would have that finalized by March 2012. And I've also looked at the Region 4, which is the Texas Cooperative Purchasing Network option, which is through TCG and Region 4. It's their 125 solution. It's also an interlocal agreement, and that one has a $2.9 million less in cost, providing similar services with what we're getting. We could also look at implementing in-house enrollment system, and again, we do have to have a system in place to do that, and we have to have staff. Right now, I don't have the system, and I don't have the staff to allow me to do that. We could also purchase or lease the software for benefits online enrollment, utilize a separate third-party vendor to provide leave of absence administrative services, because those are critical for compliance. And I mentioned earlier that we need to determine some of the must-have functions and eliminate those that are not really necessary. It's just and determine what the employees are really utilizing, and probably we could save some money from that. So those are some of the options that we have, and again, depending on what we get from the bid. Last time we only had 3 bidders within the contract, because it's very complex.
There are these options, the in-house options. I don't consider those to be options.
Correct.
I don't make any sense.
Back in 2009, was the RFP for 5 years for each of those firms, or what was the benefit of signing a 5-year contract?
It's because of the intricacy of the implementation, and it's just a lot of things to do when you're putting a program such as this. It takes a lot to implement, because we have to get all the vendors. Get all the vendors to, get all the files and get everybody signed up. It's just a lot of implementation.
The thing about the 5-year period is we had Houston as a partner. They're primary on this, and we consulted with them as we went through the process. The RFPs that we're going out for now, we're going to do on our own, because we think we have sufficient size, and we can control it. We don't think there's that much benefit to being with Houston. We were with Houston, as Marita described, because we had a mess, and Dr. Moses concluded that was the fastest and most efficient way to fix it, and it turned out to be that. But we don't need that right now.
So, well, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot or necessarily be just mean, but, you know, Mercer was censured by the Texas Department of Insurance in 2006, specifically for bundling DISD and HISD together and claiming it would save DISD money because they were bundling all these benefits together, and turned out to be just patently false. The Department of Insurance censured, and there was supposedly some effort made to collect monies for DISD because of the censure. And yet here in 2009, we're entered into another 5-year agreement with a company that just basically defrauded us. And I can you help me understand why we got into the agreement again in 2009?
Is that significant, Mike? I mean,
it is. I mean, it goes to the very basis of how DISD spends my money.
It used to do business.
Used to do business. All right. Well, I mean, if you're saying that this is all going to be made better, now show me. Make it better.
Well, that's what we intend to do. I think Maria's described our RFP process. It's going to go out, and we will evaluate it. We'll get some professional help in evaluating because it is a lot of money, and over a period of time. And it's not a decision that you. It is a delicate decision. I mean, we got 20,000 people that are involved with this that you cannot, and it has to be done right. I don't know what happened before. I don't know what happened. I haven't followed that with Mercer, but I do know that it's not going to happen again. So
well, I can appreciate that, but you know, Google was around in 2009, right? I mean, y'all could have Googled this and gotten enough information to raise enough red flags. Again, I'm not.
They did put it out to bid.
it was out for bid. I mean, there were 3 people that bid on it. Now that may not be great. Now our indications are right now is that we think we'll have a much more aggressive group bidding on this, in particular possibly the Region 4 folks, and we think that that combination that we'll be able to save money and provide the sufficient same service to our employees.
Help me understand, when would the district really realize those benefits given the transition period?
Probably we would. Our benefits enrollment opens in the spring.
April.
Yeah.
April.
So we would not be able to switch a system over until then. So it would be the following year. Spring of 13 is when we would switch, and the full impact of the budget would be in the 13-14 school year.
Louisville do. Al?
Louisville's a lot smaller, but we used, I think we used this Region 4.
CPN.
It was a different name. That's who we used. And we were successful with it, and it was cost effective.
Yeah, I've actually have a survey of some districts in here. I'm sorry, I was going the wrong direction.
And Steve, in light of the history that Mike stated with Mercer, will Mercer be allowed to bid?
Yeah, I mean, we can't really prevent anybody from bidding. I mean, they'll respond to the RFP. I mean, they're going to be, they know, they're on notice that we think we can reduce our.
Clear. I mean, Mercer is a huge firm.
Right.
Globally, I assume. Certainly.
They're big.
The question is that they, at a minimum, overpromised and underdelivered by what they did, and they got censured for it. At a minimum.
I'm confused about the district not being able to allow somebody to bid. You're saying you can't legally disqualify?
We can debar vendors for doing, for some specific things, but in general, we put up the bid out there, and anybody can bid on it. Now,
Bid, but we don't have to
we don't
accept.
have to.
I guess, and I know nothing about this. I mean, this is the first I've ever heard of this. But it just raises a question in my mind legally. If the district believes someone defrauded them, a vendor defrauded them, why would you?
I think that's a little strong.
That's,
I mean,
so
I
that's
don't
not
know.
the case.
So the State Board of Insurance says there was a defraud, and they were trying to get money back for Dallas ISD. Did we ever
But
recover
in
money?
2009, we rebid this, and there was not a significant enough difference in cost to pick someone other than Mercer. And so Mercer was picked as the winning bid to continue on at a price that was roughly the same. Now, if there were, and presumably those issues got taken care of in that contract, the issues that Mike referred to. And I mean, I don't, we are where we are, and what we're going to do is to be very aggressive in pushing the vendors to give us the lowest price and provide quality service to our employees.
This will be a management and board decision.
Yeah, I guess what I'm concerned about, I'll leave this alone after this, is if, this whole exercise is about saving costs, and if we are allowing people to, let's not use the word defraud, let's use some other word, if we're allowing people to charge us more, to overcharge us, and we are continuing to do business with them, that doesn't make sense to me from a cost saving.
Nobody's going to argue with you on that. I mean, nobody's arguing. No, we're not arguing that. I know the question is I don't think, based on the RFP that went out in 2008, and was selected in 2009, that we believe that's occurring. We do believe that the market has changed significantly and our approach to it is different, and that we can reduce, there are options available to us today that we didn't have then, and that we think we can reduce the cost. And at a bare minimum, we can put pressure on a current vendor to sharpen their pencil.
All I ask, because, you're right, we need to move forward collectively as a district. But the previous culture was one of not fully informing the board so they could make intelligent decisions. And I think all we would like to do is ask that the administration continue, because they've done an excellent job in the last year, of informing our trustees so that they have the information to make a good decision. Clearly, had they had this information in 2009, perhaps they would not have. If they'd known that the company was being censured by the state insurance board, specifically because of the relationship they had with HISD and DISD, perhaps they wouldn't have accepted that agreement.
I think we're also simplifying our life considerably by going it on our own. That we help with the recognition that we have a sufficient volume to do this and to get the best price. And so I think we don't deal with, we were kind of in a secondary seat with Houston in 2009, and we're not anymore. This is going to be, we're going to go out and do this directly with the vendor.
And with that being said, I want to thank you very much for the information that you continually provide, not only this board but our trustees. It's been night and day in the last year, and I really appreciate the cooperation that we've gotten from the administration, Mr. King and yourself included. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Marita.
Typins? Any questions on this one?
We have 21,200 employees, is that right? And there are about 18,000 that
are eligible, based on my report for October, yes.
Okay, just eligibility, is that how many actually participate?
On all the plans. But for the medical plan, we have about 14,500. That's because we have voluntary plans, EAP, and all of that that are eligible.
Right.
We're at 85 so.
About, okay.
Thank you.
And there are a lot of reasons where, some spouses
they
have
can
better
get it much
programs.
cheaper. Yeah.
The thing with TRS
percentage
Active
was.
Care, once you sign up for that, it takes an act of the legislature to get out of it. So we're in it. Normally, you would think that somebody our size would be better off being self-insured, but that's not an option. Because once you elect the TRS active care, you cannot get out.
Not unless the law changes.
Hi, I'm Marion Hamlin. I'm Director of Accounting Services, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about the supplemental pay that the district pays yearly. You might recall that last year, the Budget Commission and the trustees reviewed, and district management made some recommendations for some reductions in supplemental pay. If you would turn to page 107, we're going to start there in your handouts. So the analysis that I put together today is taking what we actually paid out last year, applying the reductions that were made and voted on by the board when they approved and adopted the supplemental pay handbook. So on page 107, you'll see that the district is, and this is my estimation, and it's going to vary a little bit from the actual budget, but this is based upon, once again, what was paid out last year. So the district will pay out approximately $7 million in supplemental pay that was subject to reduction last year. So that would be, like we did away with math and science stipends, those hard-to-staff stipends, and then other things received some reductions. There was almost $9 million of stipends or supplemental pay that received no cuts last year. And then there is approximately $5 million of supplemental pay or stipends that is funded through the campus discretionary budget. So that may be, and we'll talk about some of those
So said
specifically.
differently, this fiscal year that we're in right now, we're funding roughly $13.5 million of stipends, which is roughly $7 million less from the year before.
No, $21 million is the total that will be paid this year. That was a reduction of about $13 million from last year.
So what's the $7 million one? Those were just stipends, but that's the reduced balance?
That was a category that was reduced.
Right, right.
Reduced to
But it
7.
was reduced to 7,
Got
that's
it,
correct.
okay.
Yes.
So 20 versus 33. Okay, thank you.
And then if you'll turn to the next page, page 108, it's going to be sliced a little bit differently. So of the $21 million that's estimated to be paid out this year, you can see what some of the larger dollars are. So the largest there is the $5.6 million, which is extracurricular. So that would be athletic stipends, that would be band, choir, drama.
UIL.
UIL is probably in there too. Okay.
Trial.
Mock trial. Mm-hmm. Newspaper, yearbook. Okay. And then $3.4 million, that's the hard to staff. So that's really the majority of what's left in there is what remains of the bilingual stipend. And then we have $2.3 million down at the bottom. That's the supply funds. So we give all teachers $200 a year to supplement what they're already paying to put supplies in their classroom. And then $4.1 million is what we call here in the district, we call extra duty pay. So that is some kind of hourly payment to a teacher or staff member for something that is above and beyond their job duties. Such as if I worked graduation, or if I, no, SILT is separate. SILT is the third one there. Okay, that could also be if I show up early to open school that morning. I have opening school responsibilities, and I run the metal detector, or I work after school and do tutoring after school. Okay, so there's lots of different things that kind of.
There's also professional development in that number.
Yes.
So to the extent that with it, that there is professional development, say on a weekend, that the teachers get $20 an hour for that.
And this is paid, and extra duty could be paid to a professional staff at the $20 an hour rate, or to a non-professional staff at $8 an hour. Okay.
Any of our athletic directors receive any stipends out of this chunk of dollar bills?
Yes. We've got, actually, I'll have to look into that because I think that
I think there's
athletic director's just salary. It's just salary.
But head coaches and assistant coaches get
Right.
stipends.
Yes.
What's the difference between additional duties and extra duty pay?
I'm sorry.
That might be a
I'm sorry. Additional duties could be tutoring. I misspoke before, so that's not extra duty, but additional duties. So I kind of had to lump these. So
Is there any fundamental distinction between them, or is it just?
some kind of more professional type activities would be the additional duties. So like LPAC chair. What else is lumped in there? Campus testing coordinator. You know, so maybe
Speech therapist.
maybe something that I do as a part of my profession, but just, maybe I'm coordinating something for the campus versus graduation.
And is this at the principal's, are these categories sort of at the principal's discretion?
Not everything. Okay, so some is with if the teacher is given this LPAC coordinator responsibility, with that LPAC coordinator responsibility comes extra duty.
And they take English proficiency.
Okay.
Jeopardy.
Got 6 acronyms for that one.
Okay.
Military.
Can I ask a question? So the testing coordinator
Sorry,
for the
Susan.
school gets a stipend, but their job is the testing coordinator for the school?
No, that would be if it's above their normal job duties.
Like in elementary school, you might give it to a,
So middle
Counselor.
school has somebody that's their full-time job maybe because they've got so many kids, but at a smaller school, it's somebody that takes it on in addition. Okay, thanks.
Roughly how many employees receive stipends?
I did not pull that number. I pulled the dollars.
do we,
I can
With
get
the
that.
extra duty pay in there, it's it's probably approaching half of the professional staff.
and how do we do any auditing? For instance, teacher signs up to be mock trial coach, and then he doesn't make. How do we make sure the person didn't get this? At what point did they get the stipend for being the mock trial coach?
And that is something that the district staff is definitely working on managing better, because there has been situations just like that where the person is receiving a stipend on a monthly basis, all leading up to something in the spring that's going to happen, and then that doesn't happen in the spring. And so, point well taken, and that is something that I know that the district administration is looking at, because the way that the mocks, you brought up the mock trial stipend. So the way that works is there's a department, central organization department that owns that stipend and deems which person on the campus will get it. And so those departments are working on trying to have more accountability on a go-forward basis to make sure that that person is earning the stipend. So it has not been done great in the past.
Soccer after school. I applied that for they evaluated me.
Soccer would be local, be that local athletic director, but
Something that's not local then.
well, the principal might say, I want you to be the mock trial coach, but what she's saying is there's also a department that coordinates the whole mock trial process, and if that school doesn't show up for the competition, the question, it's a red flag, and I'd like, hopefully, because theoretically, every high school is eligible to participate in mock trial, but it's real hard to get people to do that. But I've seen situations where, we've got a mock trial coach, and then you look around in the spring, we didn't compete. And so I think, well, gosh, did that guy get paid for having 2 meetings?
To ask my question differently, if you wanted to be the mock trial coach and I wanted to coach soccer, how does that process work? I'm sure there has to be a cap. And if, we have to shoot how that decision made.
I would have to get back to you on that. I do not know.
Do we know who makes the decision?
Well, the athletic department makes the athletic decisions in coordinating with the campuses, but the mock trial, using that
I think it's
example,
what
is
I
more of the
observed
the
in-
principal's discretion.
The tapping of those positions or the applying for it is all local.
Right, and then the principal coordinates with the central organization to say, here's my mock trial coach.
So in general, the principal or somebody tells you this person is doing this work and they deserve the stipend and we pay it.
Yes, sir.
The question, and the question is ultimately, if you made the principal, she knew that if I picked somebody for a stipend and ultimately that stipend wasn't going to be earned, but I could use that somewhere else on the campus, that'd be the best check.
I think it's also unique that the person that's selecting whoever does this is not the person that's also seeing if they're actually doing what they're doing.
So how many head coaches do we have at DISD? Anybody at the high school level?
We've got a ton of them. We've got 20-something high schools and probably 20-something sports at every high school.
So this head coach stipend is, there's a head coach for each sport. So we've got $1.2 million in stipends for head coaches and another $6.5 million for assistant coaches. That's $1.85 million. Coaches, do any of these coaches and head coaches teach a class, or are they just coaching?
Oh, yeah. I think they all teach.
The only one who doesn't teach is the athletic director. And that was a big thing with Jesuit, because Jesuit coaches before coming into UIL did not have to be a teacher at the school.
Not every sport has an assistant coach.
And that's another issue for another time, is you have to fill your coaching positions compatible with your teaching so you might need a wrestling coach and you just have an art opening. And so, it's all and another problem is you bring someone in and a geography teacher seems to be a common coaching compatibility that I've noticed. But once they're in the building, they can stay and teach geography and decide they don't want to coach anymore. So you have to wait till you have another opening to fill the vacant coaching position.
Is this a line item that is relatively,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
say line item, is there a stipend line across using organization codes or function codes? It's relatively, this is compensation. And so I would just ask you, if you said what's our total, the reason I ask is how many people get a stipend or how many employees in total, is just what are our stipend expense as a percent, as per person or per person who receives it or per staff relative to other districts that we compete with, and does it seem relatively consistent? And if it does, then it made me feel, I'll just speak for me, the number feels right or wrong based on what other people are doing.
Yeah, I've got a group of moms down in Oak Cliff that are just beside themselves thinking that their athletic directors are being overcompensated and underutilized on campus. So that's the reason for my questions. I'd like to be able to do the same thing. Take a look, see how many coaches are sharing this, $1.8 million, and how many classes do they teach? And that's what the parents would like to see.
But the stipend, every stipend is listed in the stipend book, is it not?
Yes.
Wasn't that book included?
It was approved in June.
Which would stipend are listed by sport and what have you, so you could tell exactly how much is, who's getting what amount.
It should.
Get you a number.
One of those 7 should be your athletic.
Sure.
But I had heard someone had suggested that there's a school that has an abundance of over average, and it's for it's to get more coaches.
Right. I sent the commission earlier today a stipend both electronically, so it should be in the email.
Thank you.
And just so you can trace information in this presentation back to the stipend handbook, you'll see, especially if you look on page 109, you can see there's a stipend code, and that will then trace back to a code used in the supplemental pay handbook.
Do we have,
You can understand more about each one.
does Richardson have as many categories as we have? And how do, or Louisville, and how do we compare? If we were to line this up with another district, would we have more or less, or the same number of categories? And then on the major categories, does our soccer coach get the same stipend?
Let's take a look at that.
I know that the compensation department did compare the athletic stipends last year when they were coming up with the supplemental earnings handbook.
I've asked Richardson and Carrollton Farmers Branch to send me their stipend list.
Just for an example, Mike, looking at it, a high school head coach, female athletics coordinator, her stipend is $6,095 a year. A high school head coach and assistant coach coaching 2 sports, $43.31 a year, above what their salary is.
Perspective, if y'all can hammer this out before May and give the board, hey, we've looked at it, this is our strongest recommendation, because this is something that could easily be politicized at the 10th hour, right? So if we can compare to districts and y'all can hash it out, Alan and I can say, board, they've done it, this is their recommendation, no reason to fight about it.
One other question that I've mentioned earlier is I would like to see, if you agree to do one of these things and you get hired to the campus to do it, then I think if you all of a sudden change your mind in the second year that you no longer want to do it, I think I would like to see some link to your employment because of the situation I suggested, that you can point to situations where people get to a campus with the promise of yes, and I'll coach X, and then they decide they don't want to anymore, and the kids are left without a coach. And if you have low turnover at the campus, you can't. I don't know. I'd like to see some linkage between your agreement to this stipend and
I mean, what's this more days than contracted for coaches, $1.1 million? Is that to fill in that situation?
No, sir. That's where teachers are under a 187-day contract, and so if the coach is required to come in before school starts, they actually are paid for those days, and those we call CODA days. Yeah, and that's in addition to the stipend, because the stipend is to cover the amount of extra hours you work each week of your contract.
As we have about 3 or 4, any other questions? I'm sorry.
I just want to be sure that if we do some kind of linkage there, that in each case is looked at individually, because let's say that you have a case where a spouse dies. It's not that the coach doesn't want to do that, but because of family,
sure. Sure, but there's but just.
I think it's pretty rare.
And other districts have dealt with it, and I gave the Jesuit example. I just don't. It's a problem, and maybe the better question is, as long as we're talking to Carrollton and Garland and whomever, do they do anything like that? Because we're not the only ones who deal with that.
Absolutely.
In general, everybody tries to do that, but as a blanket rule, nobody does. Because there's always some sort of set of circumstances which allow that.
We use the remaining few minutes we've got before we break up on page 98, and let's just talk about the calendar. So today is the 7th. So just, Al, if you want to just kind of go through what you need from us, whether or not you think we've got enough needs. I guess our next meeting right now, as scheduled, is not until December 5th, and then we meet again January 9th. It seems like I remember right, there's sometime in February you're looking for a memo from us, if I remember right.
I think we're still on track, because I don't think you can do much more till we narrow down our recommendations, and we've given you, in this document, if you'll review all the cuts that we've received from everybody, I've got a principal group, and I got the admin management team, and just see if there's any questions you have there, or any other calculations you want. And then as we work through the real estate council on the possible school consolidations and get that information to you, and start coming up with some sort of focus on possible reductions. We're just kind of going through the process, and I think we're still on.
Is there any other topic that you guys want to make sure, maybe Eric, you want to make sure, given your earlier comment about stipends, that we definitely talk about in the next 2 to 3 meetings?
It'd be worthwhile to have a conversation about SILT, CILT. Is anybody interested in having the SILT folks give us a presentation? About $1 million worth of stipends here, and I hear from every single teacher I talk to that's a waste of time and money.
SILT itself or the stipend?
SILT itself.
What does it mean again? Sorry.
Campus Instructional Leadership Team.
I'm happy about that.
Can we do that? Thank you.
Oh, you can.
Go ahead, Louise.
Well, I mean, I heard that come up, and I heard a counter argument. I don't have a personal opinion on it, but you could say that about any of these. And another one that some people are questioning is the bilingual stipend. So, I don't know. I think it's more, my feeling is it's more, let's see how we compare to our peers in all categories. I have a feeling that
I'm not sure that gives us, I think that's a good idea. We do need to see how we compare to our peers, but I'm not sure that gives us information that's any more relevant. I'd much rather take a look at, what are these folks doing? How does it move the needle on student achievement? And if it doesn't, then let's eliminate it, or let's make a recommendation to eliminate it.
I mean, there's a distinction between SILT and bilingual. I mean, SILT is something that is a policy that the district has decided that that's what they were going to do, and that those people. The bilingual is kind of a hard to staff, and it's dictated by state law. So there's.
I forgot about that. That's right. The component we kept, we have no flexibility, and it's dictated by.
Well, the use, hiring bilingual, having bilingual personnel is dictated. What it takes to hire them is what that stipend is. I mean, there's no state law that says we have to pay them a stipend, but we have found that in order to staff to a reasonable level, we have to pay a stipend.
My suggestion would be if folks have things, whether it's from trustees or from folks on the commission they'd like to discuss, get them to Todd, and let's see, when we can slot them in.
And definitely for SILT, I mean, we need to get principals.
Exactly.
We need to have principals here to talk about that as to what they see the value.
But just in terms of meeting our timetable, this would be a good time to, go back to your notes about last year and say, okay, what do we want to focus on? Because we only have so much time.
I agree. I will tell you one thing that I would like us to focus on for whatever it's worth is I'd like to understand college access, because how much we're funding throughout the prior years. To me, my personal opinion is and I'd just like to understand it better. So
you're talking about freedom?
EIF, ASP, just trying to understand kind of who's opting in, what we're paying for per kid, how do they think about the other programs that other districts use?
Well, look, we've got to get to $30 million, and every $1 million is 16 plus teachers. And, given the good work that was done last year, and given that we're getting kind of skinny this year, I don't know how we're going to get to it without taking a hard look at reduction in teaching staff. And I sure want to take the position this year that we did last year, so we need to save as many, education is a student and a teacher. So I'd like to, make as many recommendations for cuts as possible to protect as many teachers as possible. Let you guys know how I'm coming at this again this year. So
Scheduled to look at the staff requirements?
Or do we know that's the number?
Oh, we don't know it really. still might need to add that.
We'll probably lose less than 30 million in revenue right now. And what we're saying that 30 million would cover some growth in some other areas that we don't have control over, that we have to increase.
Gotcha.
But I mean, again, that's still our best estimate right now. We don't have
It's a lot better estimate what we started out with last year.
When does, oh my God, when is Deloitte Touche supposed to be providing us with our audit? Is it coming out this month?
It will go out to the audit committee and the board Friday. On Monday, a week from today. And then there's a meeting on Thursday at 5 o'clock.
This week or next week, right?
The 17th.
Yes, 17th.
You know, because the board meeting has been moved back from 5:30 to 7 on the 17th, and so the audit committee meeting will be at 5 or 5:30. And we'll cover that, and then the board will accept the audit.
So what time do you guys wrap up when you start at 7?
Oh, it all depends on what we have to soapbox about.
How many speakers you have, right?
What was the reason for moving it to 7 for November and December?
Personal conflicts with a couple of trustees, so we want to make sure that
Over there.
we had quorum. But before, are we adjourning?
Almost.
What's the Appendix B? The facilities?
The stuff that we're going to come, I thought we're going to talk about next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't get to it this.
Okay, I just wondered.
It's facilities, a list of facilities that are not utilized in any way. The first page, and then the following is kind of a list of all of the facilities, administrative facilities, and a report that was done.
Is there a separate?
Sort of.
There's a separate board committee, okay, a committee board, okay, and then the real estate council put together a volunteer group of people to effectively help provide some advice on how to think about facilities. That advice would go to this commission and then ultimately to the board.
At the school, where are the school closing discussions? Because they're not coming up in the boundary meeting right
They're
now.
coming up, well, they're not coming up in the boundary meeting because they don't know which ones they're considered. So what I think is going to happen in the next week or two, we're going to have a board committee on the facility usage meet, and we're going to make a recommendation on what facilities we think are possible for consolidation, and then we'll take that to and the maybe back here, and then I'm going to try to take that list to the board in December so they can talk about it. And they can talk about it again in January. If they want to do it in January, then we got to hold all the public hearings and everything. So we're trying to get that out and get as much feedback and so we can see where that thing shakes out, because that could be, $6 or $7 million. So you take that, it's just a matter of whether or not that thing's going to fly. Did I answer your question?
Suggesting that any public hearings be after the holidays so that they can actually attend the meetings. That would be a nice thing to have happen. If we look at it.
The public hearings on this, I really...
You do it in January if you have 4 public meetings in December, right? So
The problem with that, not that it matters, but I'm just saying that not with the public hearing, but the problem with this whole process is going to be we're trying to adopt a budget and we still got that $6 or $7 million out in limbo.
you have a good feel for what we can put back into the general fund this year? Or?
I should, but I don't.
Well,
Last
right
year or
now-
this year?
Last year.
Right now, we're projecting about a $34 million increase in the fund balance. 27 million of that came from the EDGE jobs, and then the balance of it is just a variety of pluses and minuses. But so we will end up this year at around 134 million. That's June 30, 2011.
So for the audit, it's 100 million.
What? No, it's
134.
For the one that we just completed?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
We managed properly, because of vacancy issues, you should be able to add at least a nominal amount every year to the fund balance.
Except this year, we're carrying those 200 positions, which is
true.
going to be trouble. But we did, remember, we adopted this budget with a surplus, so, this budget has surplus so that we can not have to make those
And
big cuts.
attendance is in line with budget?
Yeah, we feel like we're on track. We feel like our expenditures will be less than budget, even with so we're carrying today, right now.
I mean, $1.25 billion budget, adding $25-30 million is not a very big percentage. It's not a big margin for error when you're going every year.
Send your comments to me on anything you guys want to talk about, okay?
We're going to get to speak tonight.
I'll see you.
Always will need more than that.
They sure will.
Alan?